Hey, how you doing? I hope you had a fantastic week and welcome back to Codacity. In this channel, we cover interesting areas in tech, and today I'd like us to look at the blockchain. We're going to see how we're going to apply the blockchain in the creative economy, and I'm going to go through 4 areas of application. The first one is ownership, the second one is attribution, the third one is licensing, and the fourth one is royalty payments. We're going to see how blockchain can be used in the creative economy in these 4 areas. So let's go. So before we discuss why we need the blockchain, let's describe what the blockchain is. At the heart of it, a blockchain is a distributed ledger. It's essentially a document that everyone on the network owns. Now, normally what you'd have is that a single person or a central authority would keep a copy of this document. In a blockchain, every party owns that document and they get to participate in the consensus that decides what that document is and how it's updated. So why are guys moving to the blockchain? Why are people abandoning centralized networks and centralized databases for the blockchain? Well, to understand that, let's look at the history of the internet. The internet is split into 2 parts. We've got Internet 1.0 and Internet 2.0. Internet 1.0 has 2 webs. We've got the static web that was between 1990 and 1995. Then we've got the dynamic web, which was between 1995 and 2004. The static web basically had websites that were really simple, just simple sites. They didn't change much. But in Web 2.0, we saw the rise of social media networks, and the websites could dynamically change and alter their content. This is when we saw the rise of social media networks and the rise of e-commerce. In Web 3.0, we're seeing a move to highly decentralized networks. And the reason we're seeing a move to highly decentralized networks as opposed to centralized networks or centralized databases is because in Web 2.0, there were a lot of issues on privacy and trust. Trust was broken in Web 2.0. We saw a lot of banks collapse. We saw social media networks misuse privacy, and this led to the creation of the blockchain. And Web 3.0 is trying to correct this. So this is why we're seeing a move towards the blockchain ecosystem. It's a way of remedying the trust and the privacy that was broken. So in summary, we're seeing a move from information that was in Internet 1.0 to a move to a more of an Internet of value in Internet 2.0. So now that we know why guys are moving to the blockchain, let's look at how we can apply the blockchain in the creative economy and see how we can solve some of the headaches. One of the biggest headaches we have in the creative economy is ownership. And under ownership, we've got a couple of areas, and let's look at attribution first. Attribution is essentially identifying the rightful owners of content. And as we've become a more digital creative economy, it's becoming harder and harder to identify who owns particular content and who doesn't. And as content becomes free, as digital content pervades our society, it's becoming really harder to identify and correctly offer attribution to the real license owners. And this is where I think we can apply the blockchain. So one way we can solve attribution is we can use the blockchain to identify and trace who are the rightful owners of content. We can essentially embed content in the blockchain and use the metadata in the blockchain to link content to the real owners of that particular content. And I think this is really crucial. The second area is that since this content is going to have embedded metadata in it, and this content is essentially going to be linked towards the blockchain, this is going to prevent alteration of that particular content. So what this will do is that it will allow us to know once content is altered. It will allow owners of content to know who has altered the content. And this is really key towards protecting their creative works. The third area is that it's going to allow more distributed ownership of content. So it's going to allow a lot of open source initiatives in the digital creative economy. And this is really good for the economy as a whole. And as we move towards an open source economy where strangers interact with each other, it's key and it's essential that we ensure that all of these people have rightful ownership of that particular content. So under attribution, I think these are 3 areas where the blockchain is really going to come in handy. Another area under ownership where we can use the blockchain is licensing. Licensing of content as it stands is really hectic. It takes days, weeks, even years to get licensing approval for particular content. And this ends up favoring big players who have huge intellectual property that they can profit from. So smaller players are disadvantaged because there are no licensing platforms that provide high volume licensing of content so that they can live off their creative works. How licensing via the blockchain could work here is that content creators could embed smart contracts in their content, and all you have to do is to call that particular smart contract if you want to request for a particular license. And if that particular content creator agrees with the request that you have, all they have to do is to allow that to happen via code. And it could take place in a matter of seconds. This would essentially remove the huge time headaches in terms of issuing licenses, and it's going to make licensing easier. The second case is that we're going to see a huge emergence in terms of micro licensing, whereby content creators issue small licenses but to a huge diverse array of people so they can essentially make a living in terms of creating content. And I think this is really essential for the creative economy. The third area and ownership where we can apply the blockchain is royalty payments. Royalty payments are complex and they can be very tedious to process. They can take a lot of time, they can involve a lot of people, and the costs incurred can essentially end up eating 70% of the royalty fees you're receiving. How the blockchain can remove these inefficiencies is that we can automate royalty payments since we know who the content creators are, since they are embedded in the content itself. Every time royalty payments are remitted, content creators get paid in real time, and I think this is really awesome. The second area is that we're going to see huge platforms emerge for micro royalties, whereby content creators get paid in small amounts, but since they're getting paid by a lot of people, they essentially end up making a decent living from their creative works. So this is a decent area where I'd like to see the blockchain apply and solve some of these problems. The fourth area and ownership where we can apply the blockchain is transparency. Content creators can use the blockchain to make sure that their content is more transparent. There are particular creative works whereby transparency is key, especially content like fine art. Content creators can ensure that individuals can see who truly owns that particular content and what's the value chain in that content, so that individuals who are buying this content, they can be sure that they're not being defrauded. This is key because we want to ensure that content creators get value for money for the content that they are making and they get to make a living off of it. So one area is that we can make ownership more visible by opening up the content, the value chain in that particular content. Now, this leads to another question. Will content creators enjoy the benefits of privacy? Yes, absolutely, they can enjoy the benefits of privacy. There's so many methods, there's so many algorithms out there that allow people to share content without sharing the content itself. Techniques such as zero proofs and using hashes to maintain privacy are going to work here because content creators won't have to reveal or exchange content for them to prove that they own that particular content. They can use this technique to prove that they are the owners of that particular content. So transparency is an area whereby the blockchain can be used to solve some of these issues in the creative economy. We've seen how we can use the blockchain to solve some of the ownership problems in the creative economy. Another area where we can apply the blockchain is in terms of ensuring that content creators can set control mechanisms over the content that they create. Right now, as it stands, when content creators create and release the content in the wild, whether it's paid or for free, they have very little control over that particular content in terms of setting access and pricing. What the blockchain can do is that it can allow content creators to limit access of that particular content. Let me use an example in the music economy. Let's say an artist has an event and they want to set ticket pricing for that particular event. Right now, they can do that through third parties, of course, but let's say they want to set particular controls such as their tickets cannot be resold or their tickets can be resold but at a particular specific price. Right now, it's hard for them to do that. And again, most of these third parties, they have a lot of ticketing fraud involved. And so it becomes very hard for musicians to trust them. So what the blockchain can do here is that it can allow particular scenarios whereby an artist can say, okay, my tickets cannot be resold. Once you buy, that's it. Or yeah, you can resell this ticket, but you cannot resell it above this particular price. There's a huge black economy in the world of tickets, and ticket resale is a really huge issue in the music economy. Some don't see a problem with it, others have a problem with it, but yeah, the blockchain can be used to solve this issue. These are some of the few areas I believe we can use the blockchain in the creative economy. But the creative economy is really big and there are so many areas, so please hit me up in the comments, tell me what other areas are in the creative economy and how would you like to see the blockchain applied. I'd like to hear from you. Please hit me up in the comments. That's it from me. This is a really short video. I wanted to keep it as brief as possible. If you'd like this video, you know what to do. Hit like, share it, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification icon to get notified when I release new videos. Till next time, peace.